Is Porsche's Boxster still the best car of its kind in 718 series form? This is the first mid-engine Porsche to feature a flat-four engine since the 914 model of 1969 and claims to have reinvented itself for a new era. Time to put it to the test.
If you know your cars, you'll recognise this one. That's a Porsche Boxster, isn't it? Well, yes, but not quite as you might know it. We've grown familiar with this car for over 2 decades, and over that time it's certainly changed. Never, though, so fundamentally as this. Welcome to the 718 Boxster. 718, what's that about? Well, the badge references Porsche's 718 racing models of the 50s and 60s that swept to victory in events like the Targa Florio, Sebring and Le Mans. In doing so, though, it also references something much more significant. The flat-four engine used then, and for the first time in a Boxster, used now too. It's hard to overstate the importance of this change. After all, ever since this car's original introduction, way back in 1996, a sonorous, normally aspirated flat-six power plant has been an integral part of its appeal. The market, though, expects this car to get faster and more efficient with every successive model evolution, which simply wasn't going to happen if it stayed with a 6. On top of that, Porsche had become concerned at the way that sales of this Boxster and its Cayman fixed-top counterpart were affecting the market penetration of the brand's pricier and more profitable 911 models. Greater differentiation was needed between these two different segments of the company's range. Hence this 718 Boxster model's adoption of smaller capacity, flat-four turbo power. Now that wasn't a move calculated to please the purists, but then these people have short memories. Far from betraying Porsche's heritage, the switch here to 4 cylinders is in many ways more appropriate for a compact, relatively affordable roadster of this sort. After all, the first ever Porsche road car, the 356 model of 1948, was a mid-engined 4-cylinder machine. And the very design that inspired the Boxster, the 550 Spider model, made famous by the film star James Dean, had 4 cylinders. So too, in the 80s and 90s, did cars like the 924, the 944 and the 968. And more recently, Porsche has won the 2015 World Endurance Championship and Le Mans with its 919 LMP1 racer, which uses a turbo 4-cylinder petrol-electric power plant. So, plenty of reasons why such a fundamental change to this car might be relevant, necessary, and even desirable. But along with upgrades to the driving dynamics, plus changes to the styling, the cabin and the media connectivity, does it all add up to a real improvement? Well, we're going to try this 982 series model and find out. So, what's it like? Has Porsche really spoiled this car by changing its power plant so radically? More to the point, how can it not have done? After all, you wouldn't usually massively slash the size of any car's engine and then expect it to drive and sound and perform as it did before. Yet, Porsche is promising us exactly that with the 718 Boxster range, despite its switch from flat 6 to flat 4 power. So time to fire it up and match the rhetoric to reality. Well, the initial flare's fine, but now, listen to that. If you've owned a Boxster in the past, it'll be an unfamiliar melody and one that for the first time is turbo-tuned. Most seem to find the note reminiscent of a Subaru WRX STI, another car that features a turbocharged flat 4, but whatever you think about the orchestral origins, the sound isn't the kind of thing you expect to hear in a Porsche, which isn't to say it's unpleasant. Although privately, the Stuttgart engineers will tell you that development versions of this engine sounded like an early Volkswagen Beetle. What we've ended up with here is something that's actually quite smooth and characterful, especially when it's mated to the optional sports exhaust system. So, time to put it to the test. Accelerate quickly up to speed, and if you know your Boxsters, then two things will probably strike you. First, that the wonderful wail of the old flat 6 is missing, And second, that you don't really care about any of that because this car is so damn fast. Properly spine-tinglingly and almost frighteningly fast, as Porsche told you it would be. Now, the power plants used here are smaller bore versions of the 6-cylinder unit used in the company's 911 model, though in this case the flat 4 is assisted by 1 turbo rather than 2. This seems to be quite sufficient though for performance gains, able to easily outweigh the reductions in overall engine capacity. To be specific, there's a 35 brake horsepower power hike across the board, and more importantly, increases in torque of up to 100 Newton meters, which accounts for the car's urge and preference to hurl itself towards the horizon at every opportunity. So you're getting the idea, this is a proper performance engine and a good deal more exotic than the 4-cylinder power plants used in rivals like BMW Z4, Mercedes SLC and even Alfa Romeo's 4C and Lotus's Elise. All roadsters that use 4-pot units originally developed for and transplanted from much humbler cars. It's pretty powerful too, even in its entry-level 2-litre guise. Porsche's Flat 4 puts out 300 bhp, up from the 265 bhp output of the previous 2.7-litre normally aspirated Flat 6 unit. Turbo lag? Well, there's very little of it, thanks to a clever dynamic boost feature that leaves the throttle open for a couple of seconds after you come off the accelerator. So boost pressure won't drop off when the engine's off the boil, as it ordinarily might with a conventional turbo unit. What lag remains is completely eradicated on the even more desirable 2.5-litre 718 Boxster S model that we're trying here, thanks to clever VTG variable turbine geometry technology borrowed from the brand's top 911 turbo model. This uses adjustable vanes at the turbine's inlet to better direct the exhaust gases and more quickly build the boost. It all means that if no one told you this car wasn't normally aspirated, we think you'd be unlikely to guess the fact. So there are no impediments to enjoyment of the power on offer, which in the case of this 718 Boxster S means 350 bhp, up from the 315 bhp produced by the old normally aspirated 3.4-litre Flat 6. As we suggested earlier, pushing on in this 718 series model doesn't give you the feeling of the old normally aspirated 981 series Boxster offered, of a gradual building of power accompanied by glorious changes of noise. Now, if you want that, then we'd direct you towards a supercharged V6 in a Jaguar F-Type. But in compensation, the torque you get here hits the tarmac earlier, from under 2,000 RPM, and you can rev the thing to 7,500 RPM if you're looking to replicate Porsche's quoted performance figures. The bottom line with these is that today's standard 2-litre 718 Boxster can be pretty much just as quick as the previous Flat 6 Boxster S, assuming you specify the current car with Porsche's 7-speed PDK auto transmission setup and use the launch control system that's included in the optional Sport Chrono Pack. In that guise, the entry-level 2-litre 718 manages the 62 miles an hour benchmark in 4.7 seconds, while if you stick to the manual gearbox in that base model, the figure falls to 5.1 seconds, with top speed either way rated at 170 miles an hour. This 2.5-litre 718 Boxster S variant improves those figures, of course, to 4.2 seconds with launch control, or 4.6 seconds with the manual stick shift. Top speed is 177 miles an hour. For overtaking, most of the mid-range punch you'll want is delivered at about 4,500 RPM. But if by any chance that's not enough, and you happen to have specified your 718 model with PDK auto transmission and that optional Sport Chrono Pack we mentioned, then an extra Sport Response button is provided on the steering wheel. Now press it and you precondition the drivetrain for maximum acceleration over a short but frantic 20-second period. Now, we don't have Sport Response here because we've elected to stick with the standard 6-speed manual gearbox for this test, but we do have the driving mode style that the button for that system would sit on, another feature that comes with that Sport Chrono Pack. If you've experienced almost any kind of relatively expensive, modern, performance-orientated model, then you'll probably already be familiar with the concept of selectable driving modes. Now in this case there are normal, sport, sport plus settings, and a further individual option if you can't decide and you want to program the dynamic responses of your Boxster the way a race driver would dial in his race car. As usual with setups of this sort, the different modes alter the throttle response, the steering feel, stability control thresholds, and on auto models, gear shift timings too. Plus, the settings will also tweak the suspension feel if your Boxster's fitted with the optional PASM Porsche Active Suspension Management Adaptive Damping. Standard PASM lowers the car by 10mm, or if you've got a 718 Boxster S, you can opt for a more track-focused sports setup that lowers the car by 20mm. We think you're going to want PASM if you plan to drive and corner this car hard, which is, after all, where the Boxster is in its element and sets itself apart from rivals like Audi's TTS Roadster and more powerful versions of the BMW Z4 and Mercedes SLC. Thanks to the advantages of its mid-engine configuration, this Porsche was always a class leader in this regard, and now it's even better thanks to the adoption of new, thicker anti-roll bars, wider rear wheels, redeveloped Pirelli P0 tyres, and revised springs and dampers that are part of a redesigned rear suspension system influenced by the old and much lauded hardcore Cayman GT4 model. There's a different steering system too, the rack another carryover from the top 3.8-litre 911 turbo and featuring response quickened by about 10% over the previous generation Boxster. The result is an immediate response to every driver input, especially if, as here, your car is fitted with the optional PTV Porsche torque vectoring system. Operating in conjunction with a mechanical rear differential lock, this setup works by varying the amount of torque transmitted to the rear wheels. Drive hard into a corner and PTV will apply moderate brake pressure to the inside rear wheel, shifting more drive force to the outside wheel and maximising traction. You won't feel it happening, but you will feel how quick it makes this car on your favourite twisting B-road. Small wonder that in testing, this Boxster proved to be fully 16 seconds quicker than its direct predecessor around the fearsome Nurburgring Nordschleife racetrack. Even without the electronic aids though, this is without doubt the most satisfying roadster in the segment. Perhaps the most satisfying roadster available at any price. In every situation, the balance and poise this model's famed for are delivered in abundance. The car feeling flat and agile through bends that see it change direction in a way that none of its rivals can match. The result, if you're lucky enough to find an empty, challenging, twisty road, is an experience to be relished. Now, reassuringly, there are better brakes this time around too. The 2-litre model using the system from the previous generation Boxster S, and this 2.5-litre variant using the very effective stopping setup that you'll find on a 911 Carrera. Now, our test car has gone a stage further with pricey optional ceramic composite discs, but, well, if you're going fast enough on the road to get the benefit of those, then you really might as well finish your drive with a stop at the local police station so you can give yourself up before the constabulary come knocking at your door. Now, given that we're driving a Boxster here and not its mechanically identical Cayman coupe counterpart, we should finish by talking about the fabric hood, which uses the same very effective mechanism developed for the previous model. Now, this allows you to raise or lower the roof at speeds of up to 31 miles an hour. That's a process you can begin without stopping first, and which occupies just 9 seconds from start to finish. Now, with the top in place, you'll have created a cabin that's perfectly civilised for normal conversation right up to motorway speeds. But that is not where you will want to be in this car. Track tamed, tarmac trained. It's a roadster you always promised yourself. The Porsche Boxster remains instantly recognisable, yet actually this 718 version shares only its bonnet, boot, windscreen and hood with the previous model. It exemplifies the German firm's belief in gently evolving its cars rather than trying to reinvent them every time. And that's not to say that this Roadster doesn't feature some innovative touches. Indeed, it now takes a number of its design cues from Porsche's incredible 918 hybrid supercar. These headlamps, for example, which are larger than before, get more prominence on the wings and feature 4 LED daytime running lights that sit at the corners of the main bi-xenon lamp units. Also rather pretty are these slender lights that sit above much larger air intakes. They're there for extra cooling and represent perhaps the most prominent visual expression of this model's new turbo engine concept. It's all part of a look that now asserts itself more stridently. Long gone are the days when Boxsters used to borrow body panels like the doors from the 911, and this one is further distinguished from its sister car thanks to the way that the wing tops rise well above the bonnet line. From the side, there's the trademark Boxster profile. Yet, look more closely and you begin to better appreciate the care that's been taken in subtly incorporating those new body panels. The wings hunker more snugly around the wheels, and the doors have these scalloped forms that help channel refreshing air to these vents that are set just in front of the rear wheel arches. Even the door mirrors and the door handles have been redesigned, intricately fashioned to save weight and to slip through the air more cleanly. There's interest in the restyled wheels too. You get 18-inch alloys with black brake calipers on a standard 718 Boxster model and 19 inches with red calipers on the S model. The yellow ones here on this particular S variant indicate the installation of the optional ceramic composite brake system. A more important 718 series change we need to note is that this time around the rims at the rear are each half an inch wider than before to improve lateral dynamics that are further enhanced by grippier Pirelli P0 tyres. Move to the back of the car and, as at the front, the reprofiled bumpers and more defined bodywork creases create a more purposeful stance. And also, as at the front, the thin, stylised LED light units borrow their design from the exotic 918 hybrid model. The cluster's separated by a dark trim strip emblazoned by a retro Porsche script. Above that is a spoiler that can be manually activated or which rises automatically at 74 miles an hour for high-speed stability. Further down is a deep bumper with a matte black lower section highlighted by twin tailpipes in this Boxster S variant. The standard model has a single exhaust tube. Now we should also talk about the roof. It's made of fabric, of course. Porsche wouldn't even consider fitting the kind of weighty metal folding top you get in rival models from BMW and Mercedes. And it's one of the very best setups of its kind, taking just 9 seconds to raise at the push of a button with no need to fumble about with latches and catches. You don't have to stop before you can begin the activation process, as you would in a rival Mercedes SLC, and it's even more impressive to note that you can put the top up or down like this at up to 31 miles an hour. That's the sort of speed that might rip the whole roof mechanism off on a less intricately engineered drop top. Time to focus on the cabin. Now you'll want to know what's different, and at first glance, as with the outside, the answer seems to be not a whole lot. Look a little closer though, and again the changes become more apparent. The entire upper part of the dashboard has been redesigned, for example, hence the elegance of these elevated air vents. But you're more likely to notice the installation of the new central PCM, Porsche Communication Management screen, that dominates the centre stack. Now, a PCM monitor was available in the previous version of this car, but it used clunky, old-fashioned graphics, and it was only offered as a costly extra. This much smarter 7-inch touchscreen display is standard, and it works well, although unfortunately it doesn't come exactly overburdened with standard features. We were fairly shocked, for example, that on a car of this price, it's necessary to pay extra to upgrade it with elements that are now as commonplace as a DAB radio and Apple CarPlay smartphone mirroring. And of course, features like a navigation system and in-car Wi-Fi also sit on the options list. The steering wheel is a further thing that's been revised for the 718 model line, feeling so right in your hands, whether you stick with the leather-bound 3-spoke item that comes as standard, or as here, opt to pay extra for the optional GT Sports wheel that's borrowed from the 911. This slightly smaller in diameter and featuring spokes finished in Galvano silver trim. Some enthusiasts don't like these spokes being encumbered with multifunction controls for things like the stereo, telephone features and the optional sat-nav, which has given Porsche the excuse to charge extra for buttons of that sort. Presumably then, these people may also object to another fresh 718 series feature, this slightly cheap-feeling little dial allowing you to tweak the throttle response, stability control thresholds, the suspension feel via the optional PASM adaptive damping system, and on PDK automatic models, gear change timings too via the provided normal, sport, sport plus and individual settings. As usual with Porsche models, the Sport Chrono option also gives you this bespoke stopwatch centrally mounted between the air vents on top of the dash. Around the rest of the interior, things are much as before. No bad thing, given that Porsche has long set the cabin quality standard in this segment. Rivals like Audi's TT Roadster may feature more interesting design, but in terms of trim quality and build integrity, it's difficult to better what's on offer here. All the materials used have a high-grade look and feel, and those with deep pockets can choose to personalise things to their heart's content with various leather upgrades and colourful trim inserts. As usual with Porsche products, the sheer perfection of the driving position is one of the things that would sell us this car right off the bat, with these superbly supportive sports seats, another key showroom selling incentive. Inevitably, the full leather upholstery of this car costs extra, but the standard half Sportex man-made leather, half Alcantara finish is also very attractive. The instrument binnacle is another thing that hasn't changed very much, and it didn't need to, dominated as ever by a rev counter that takes centre stage and has a small digital speedometer at the bottom, while an analogue speedo sits to the left. On the right-hand side of the main cluster is a 4.6-inch colour screen that shows information from the onboard computer, offers a G-force meter and the all-important stopwatch function, and can also display map graphics from the optional satellite navigation system. Are there things we don't like? Well, not many. It's a pity that parking sensors aren't standard, as over-the-shoulder visibility from the roofs up is pretty compromised and the rear window is rather small. Now, this can also create a slightly claustrophobic feel when the hood's raised, something that can be alleviated to some extent by the specification of lighter coloured interior trim. On the plus side, the wide windscreen and the relatively thin A-pillars give a great view forward. On to practicality, which is much better than you might expect from an uncompromised classic roadster. For a start, the cabin's wide and includes plenty of useful storage trays, a reasonably sized glove box with USB and aux in points, and Porsche's trademark pop-out cup holders. The lidded cubby between the seats can also now include an optional phone handset placement point, included with the optional Connect infotainment system upgrades, and there to boost your mobile reception. As for luggage space, well, the mid-mounting of the Boxster's flat six engine has always been a big plus in this regard. Okay, so your service technician might not immediately agree, but you will value the utility of having two boot options. A 150-litre area at the front, which can easily accommodate 2 or 3 squashy bags, with a further 130 litres of shallower but wider storage at the back. Now, in combination, that means more space than you get in a rival Mercedes SLC, and nearly twice as much luggage room as would be provided by a roadster like Mazda's MX-5. Now, of course, neither of these compartments can offer a space as broad or as practical as that you get in a rival high-powered hot hatch, but such are the compromises that one makes for mid-engine handling purity. At least the room you do get isn't compromised when the roof's down, as it would be in competitors like that SLC or BMW Z4. The 718 Boxster lineup isn't especially hard to get to grips with. Choose either the 2-litre 718 Boxster entry-level variant or this 2.5-litre 718 Boxster S, and then decide whether you want a manual gearbox or whether you're happy to find around £2,000 more for your car to be fitted with the PDK auto transmission. Budget at around the £42,000 mark for the base model, or around £51,000 for this 718 Boxster S. Previously, Boxster pricing has been pitched below that of its Cayman Coupe counterpart, but that policy has been reversed for this 718 series, with its open-topped variant costing around £2,000 more than its mechanically identical fixed-top stablemate. Now, if you're wondering about the price gap between this 4-cylinder turbo model and an equivalent 6-cylinder turbo Porsche 911 Cabriolet, well, we'll tell you that a base 370 brake horsepower Carrera version of that car costs a cool £33,000 more than this comparably performing 350 bhp 718 Boxster S. That makes you think, doesn't it? Onto the value proposition offered up by Boxster pricing against more directly comparable rivals. Now, there's a perception that this car will cost significantly more than other obvious segment alternatives, but that is probably fueled by the fact that competitors like BMW Z4, Mercedes SLC and Audi's TT Roadster are all available with lower powered engines at lower price points. And if you compare the relevant, more powerful derivatives of those cars to the equivalent 718 Boxster models, you'll actually find them priced very comparably to this car, although with like-for-like equipment levels, this Porsche would still probably require a fairly significant premium. Let's get specific. There aren't really any directly comparable SLC or F-Type variants that compete with the base 2-litre 718 Boxster, but if you're considering that variant against an equivalent Audi TTS Roadster, you'll find it'll cost much the same, and will actually save you around £3,000 on an equivalently performing 3-litre BMW Z4. A more involving alternative, priced at about the same level as a base Boxster, is the Lotus Elise 220, but unlike this Porsche, that wouldn't really be a car you could use every day. Switch your attention to this 718 Boxster S and you'll find that this Porsche commands a premium of around £5,000 over a comparable Mercedes-AMG SLC 43 or BMW Z4 S-Drive 35IS. It would cost around about the same as an Audi TT RS Roadster though, or at least it would if you specified it in equivalent PDK Auto form, and in that guise you save around £3,500 over a comparable Jaguar F-Type 3-litre V6 convertible. The only other possible alternative is Alfa Romeo's 4C Spider, but like the Elise, that's a little too uncompromising for everyday use and it's way too expensive at £60,000. It's also possibly worth pointing out that of all the Boxster S rivals we've just mentioned, only the Jaguar can match Porsche in providing the option of manual transmission. If, having considered all of this, you conclude that it is a 718 Boxster that you really want, then you're going to need to know whether the list price will deliver a decent standard of spec, or whether, as often happens with Porsche models, you're going to need to spend significantly more to get your car fitted up with a reasonable level of kit. Well, let's see. All 718 Boxster models feature bi-xenon headlamps, LED tail lights, LED daytime running lights, and an auto-deploying rear spoiler. Plus, of course, there's the electrically operable fabric roof, which can be ordered in blue, brown or red, as well as this standard shade of black. A track experience day at Porsche's Silverstone Driving Centre is also included in the price. Inside, as standard, all variants include sports seats that provide electric rake adjustment and are trimmed in Sport-Tex man-made leather with Alcantara centre sections. There's proper stitched leather for the steering wheel and the gear shifter, along with air conditioning and a heated glass rear screen for when the hood's up, and a wind deflector to keep the breeze at bay when it's dropped down. Infotainment is taken care of by a centre dash 7-inch PCM Porsche Communications Management colour touchscreen, with many of that monitor's functions also duplicated onto a 4.6-inch display in the instrument binnacle. Laudably, the PCM setup includes the Porsche Vehicle Tracking System as standard, which will give you a bit of extra peace of mind when parking. Plus, it includes a 110-watt Sound Package Plus audio system. The wheels are a key differentiation point between the 2-litre and 2.5-litre models, the base version featuring 18-inch rims with black calipers, while this S variant gets 19-inch alloys with red calipers and also features twin exhausts rather than a single tailpipe. Other extra niceties granted as standard to S model buyers include sports pedals and real leather part trimming for the seats that's also extended onto the door panels and the centre console storage compartment. Onto options. The most important one to consider is probably the Sport Chrono package. And that's something you have to have if you want the steering wheel mounted driving mode selector that allows you to set the car up to suit the way you want to drive via normal, sport, Sport Plus and individual settings. As usual with Porsches, this package also includes a lap timer clock in the centre of the dash top, plus there are dynamic engine mounts that will make the car feel stiffer through the corners and will prevent any vibration from the motor finding its way into the cabin. If you specify the Sport Chrono option on a Boxster with PDK automatic transmission, you also get two further features: launch control for Grand Prix style getaways and a sport response button in the centre of the mode controller that preconditions the drivetrain for maximum acceleration over 20 seconds for swifter overtaking. As for other optional dynamic driving features, well, you'll probably want to consider the PASM, Porsche Active Suspension Management Adaptive Damping System, that lowers the car by 10 millimetres. Now, you can activate PASM through a dedicated button, and if you've got the Sport Chrono driving mode dial, damping will also be tweaked as you switch through the various settings provided. 718 Boxster S buyers get two PASM options, the second one being an even more focused setup that lowers the car by 20 millimetres. What else? Well, keen drivers will also want to look at the PTV, Porsche Torque Vectoring System, that includes a mechanically locking rear differential and helps you get power down through the bends. That'll be nice to have on track day, the kind of environment the fearsomely expensive optional Porsche ceramic composite brakes that we have here are designed for, with their race-developed 6-piston aluminium calipers. For those keen on town driving, Power Steering Plus is an option that gives more assistance at low speeds while retaining decent feel at higher velocities. We could do without that, but we'd certainly want the optional sports exhaust system that gives you a more dynamic engine soundtrack at the press of a button and can be ordered with either silver or black finished tailpipes. Lighting also deserves your attention. You'll be offered the option of upgrading the standard bi-xenon headlamps to full LED units, and whether you take that up or not, there's also the chance to pay extra for the PDLS, Porsche Dynamic Light System, that offers speed-sensitive headlight range control. We'd also strongly recommend that you pay extra for the Park Assist front and rear parking sensors to take all the guesswork out of roof-up parking. The other key area into which you'll probably need to assign extra Boxster budget concerns infotainment. The Porsche Communications Management infotainment screen may now be standard across the model range, but it doesn't actually include many features as standard. You'll be offered the chance to upgrade it with a navigation module that includes voice control, and whether or not you do that, there's the further chance of adding in 2 additional packages. As a starting point, the Connect Mode pack gives you a DAB radio, smartphone mirroring, and in the compartment between the seats there's a smartphone storage tray that'll boost your handset's reception. If you stretch to the pricier Connect Plus pack, you get a telephone module, wireless internet access, real-time traffic information, and access to images from Google Earth and Google Street View. The Connect Plus module also interacts with a downloadable Porsche Connect app, which gives you a music streaming function and also allows you to transfer destinations that are stored in the address book or calendar of your smartphone directly to your car. Those then are the key options you'll need to consider, but of course there are many others. The sports seats can be heated and or ventilated and can feature full 14-way electric operation, full leather trim and power adjustment for side bolsters. Or you could go for sports bucket seats made from lightweight carbon fibre and fiberglass for the ultimate race car look and feel. Onto the steering wheel, which can be embellished with multifunction buttons and heat for the rim. We'd prefer to upgrade the helm to this test car's smaller diameter 911 style GT sports wheel. On a base Boxster, you might also want to add in the sport-style pedals too. Audiophiles will want to look at the upgraded 10-speaker, 505-watt Bose surround sound system, or if money really is no object, the even more desirable 12-speaker, 820-watt Burmester high-end setup. There's even a TV tuner option if you want it. Other extras you might want to look at include power folding mirrors, auto-dimming mirror faces, cruise control, a keyless entry and drive system, 2-zone automatic climate control and headlamp washers. The finishing touch would be the light design package, which fills the cabin with dimmable LEDs for a unique nighttime ambiance. We'd want the bespoke luggage kit that helps you make the very most of the restricted boot space, and possibly also items like cargo liners for the boot areas and a car cover to protect the paintwork overnight during the winter months. On a base 2-litre 718 Boxster, we'd suggest you upgrade to this S model's larger 64-litre fuel tank. And we would also recommend the option Porsche offers of personally collecting your car from the Zuffenhausen factory. On to aesthetics. Now, Porsche has introduced a number of brighter shades with the 718 series Boxster model. If you really want to stand out, this extra cost lava orange shade being a good example. There are plenty of alloy wheel choices too, including this particular car's larger 20-inch rim size if you want it. Plus, you can have your alloys finished either in body colour or in various shades of black. We've got a high gloss black finish here. There's a sport design exterior trim package, and you can have the rollover bars painted to match the exterior colour as here, or finished in aluminium. Inside you can add extra leather around the cabin, you can have the Porsche crest embossed on the headrests, or go for a full red themed leather interior package. We'd be more tempted to trim the wheel, the gear stick and roof lining in optional race style Alcantara. Alternative cabin finishing is also available in carbon, aluminium and stainless steel, or if you really must, mahogany. And you can change the colour of the instrument dial facings and the seat belts, as well as adding in branded and illuminated door sill guards if you want them. Finally, let's tell you about safety provision. All mainstream 718 Boxster models come with twin front, side and curtain airbags integrated as part of the Porsche side impact protection system. You also get tyre pressure monitoring, the usual braking aids and PSM, Porsche Stability Management Traction Control. This improved Boxster features an extra PSM Sport setting, which allows the driver to throw the car around a little more without intervention, yet keeps a safety net in place should ambition get the better of your talent. There's also a post-collision braking system that will automatically brake the car after you've hit something, helping to prevent further impacts. If you're going to be carrying kids in the passenger seat, you'll want to pay extra for an option that'll give you an ISOFIX child seat fastening and an airbag cutout switch. Want to go further? Well, you could upgrade the optional cruise control system to one featuring radar-driven adaptive technology, so your Boxster will automatically maintain a safe distance to the car in front at speeds between 18 and 130 miles an hour. A lane change assist is another extra, warning you if you drift out of lane at highway speeds. And there's also a speed limit indicator that recognises traffic signs and shows them on the central Porsche Communications Management display screen. Here, of course, is where Porsche's decision to downsize the Boxster's engines really ought to pay off. Not that the company likes that phrase. Right-sizing is a term it prefers, referring to the fact that downsizing taken too far can actually negatively affect running cost efficiency, with a small but overworked turbo unit struggling to provide the expected levels of performance. There's nothing like that here, of course, although the gains aren't quite as significant as perhaps you might have expected the radical engine change to have created. Partly that's because, a little disappointingly, the change from flat 6 to flat 4-cylinder power hasn't really saved any weight. Despite losing 2 cylinders, the new engine's only 5 kilograms lighter than its predecessor, and all of that gain is swallowed up by the extra equipment features added to this 718 series model line. Privately, Porsche's engineers admit that in normal driving, the fuel efficiency of this turbo model isn't actually very much different to its normally aspirated predecessor. Publicly, though, the company claims a 13% improvement, although you'll only really appreciate that to any significant extent if you pay extra for the PDK automatic gearbox. It's with this transmission that the bulk of the efficiency development work appears to have taken place. The Box now able to slip its two clutches to create interim so-called virtual gears at certain speeds and engine loads, rather than switching into a higher ratio that might tax the engine a little more. Plus, PDK models get a coasting function that disengages the engine from the gearbox at cruising speeds to reduce friction and drag so that the car can travel further without using more energy. It all explains why a PDK Auto 718 Boxster is usefully more efficient than a manual stick shift model. To be specific, on a 2-litre 718 Boxster with PDK, you're looking at 40.9 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 158 grams per kilometre of carbon dioxide emissions. For the manual derivative, the figures are 38.2 miles per gallon and 168 grams per kilometre. Go for the 2.5-litre 718 Boxster S PDK model and those figures rise to 38.7 miles per gallon and 167 grams per kilometre. And that's an improvement on the equivalent manual variants showing of 34.9 miles per gallon and 184 grams per kilometre. Whatever your choice of transmission, your returns will be aided by an engine start-stop system that works not only when you come to a stop, but also cuts the engine at speeds of 4 miles an hour or less wherever possible. As a result of all this, driven with some consideration, you can expect a PDK-equipped 2-litre 718 Boxster to give you 450 miles of driving range from its 54-litre fuel tank between fill-ups. With this 2.5-litre S version, that figure rises to 500 miles thanks to this variant's larger 64-litre tank. Pie in the sky? Well, perhaps. After all, if you use this car as intended, then most of the time you probably won't be driving particularly responsibly, in which frame of mind you can expect to see your fuel returns plummet into the low 20s. True, the same can be said of obvious rivals, but we can't help feeling that this Boxster's greater dynamic reserves will see it being driven harder for more of the time. One area where this Porsche will be almost certain to save you money is when you come to sell it. Residual values easily outstripping those of obvious rivals. After 3 years and or 36,000 miles, expect a PDK gearbox 2-litre or 2.5-litre 718 Boxster to hang on to around 47% of its original list price. Manual models do even better, returning around 53% of their original value. In both cases, as usual, those figures will be seriously dented if you fail to resist the temptation to load your car with too many non-essential extras. Otherwise, though, you're really set fair with this car, provided you can afford to buy it in the first place. In comparison, direct rivals to this Boxster S, like Audi's TT RS Roadster or the Mercedes-AMG SLC 43, can only retain around 39% of their value over the same period. And it all explains why this Porsche is cheaper to finance than you might expect it to be. Servicing might cost you a little more than with obvious competitors. Porsche spares are never the cheapest, but scheduled servicing intervals are reasonably well spread, every 20,000 miles or 2 years, whichever comes first. Surprisingly, the company hasn't copied other brands in offering a range of prepaid servicing packages at point of purchase, but dealers do operate a fixed price servicing regime, so you'll always know exactly what work will be carried out and what it's going to cost. What else? Well, there's the usual 3-year unlimited mileage warranty, which can be extended by either 1 or 2 further years on request. Boxster owners also get a 3-year breakdown recovery package, a 3-year paint warranty, and a 12-year anti-corrosion guarantee. As for insurance, well, that's rated at Group 43 for the 718 Boxster, which seems reasonable, and Group 46 for the 718 Boxster S, which is much better than rival Jaguar F-Type 3-litre V6 model's Group 50 rating. If Porsche had launched the Boxster with 4 cylinders from the very beginning, no one would have anything but praise to shower on this car. If you can afford one, there is, after all, very little not to like about this class-leading roadster. As it is, though, there's a danger that this model will be forever remembered as the one with a downsized engine. So it's important here that we should put the record straight. The power you have is surely more important than the cylinder count, and this improved 718 Boxster is significantly faster than any of its predecessors. Beyond that though, we've tried to show in this film why a flat 4 format better suits this car in terms of its responsible development, its market positioning, and even its historical context. There is a price to pay for that, of course, and like the Boxster's other admirers, we miss in this one the sonorous howl under full throttle that so characterised previous versions. On balance, though, we'd argue that the gains made here make that sacrifice worthwhile. Which is not to say that we think this 718 Boxster is perfect. There are equipment features lacking in the standard tally that you should never have to pay extra for on such an expensive sports car, especially one that can sometimes cost significantly more than direct alternatives in this sector once everything has been taken into account. Still, if you can afford this Porsche's premium and you're shopping in this part of the roadster segment, we think you'll absolutely want a 718 Boxster, the best car of its kind that money can buy. Is it the best model Porsche makes? Well, you might argue that. Is it head and shoulders above its rivals? Undoubtedly.